My name is Vija Williams, and this is our Wednesday webinar. We do these almost every single Wednesday from noon to 1 Pacific time. And these are completely free, no obligation at all, and they are for you if you are a real estate agent. These are designed for you real estate agents to get tactical, practical tips, advice, direction that you can use right away. So my mission statement for our Wednesday webinars are that you can walk away from every single webinar with 1 to 3 action items that you can use within an hour of the webinar. Not saying you have to do it within the hour, but my goal for every one of them is that it's so tactical and so helpful for you that you could walk away from this and immediately implement things. I am very, very, very choosy about who I bring on, and the topics that we use for these are really coming from you, all of you guys who take the time, who are on our mailing list, who take the time to email back and respond to our emails and say, hey, I'd love to see this, or I'd love to see that. Sometimes we do polls in the Pivot Shift Ahead Facebook group, and we say, hey, what are your biggest challenges right now? What do you guys want to see right now? And those are the topics that we choose. So really, lately we've been focused on a lot of listing related topics because most of the nation is in a very low inventory state. And we're indirectly continuing to do that with today's topic. But I think today's topic, might be considered a little break from that, Jeanette, because today's topic is probably the number one question you and I get. I'm guessing it's the number one question I get, which is, Vija, how did you get into luxury? Is that probably your number one question?
All the time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So today I have Jeannette Spinelli with me, and Jeannette is a superstar out of Austin, Texas, who has an incredible luxury business. And I've known Jeannette for a while. We actually met Jeannette because I think I was moderating a panel in one of our events for luxury, and we just started texting helpful. And talking.
You were so helpful, I just have to say, because this speaks to what everyone should be doing in this industry, is we met and you mentioned something on the panel, and I just chased after you after the panel and I said, I want more. And you sent me this amazing spreadsheet and it was golden. So thank you very much for that. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm so glad that helped. I remember that time you were going through a really big decision, and I think I remember it's when you ultimately joined Chris Suarez.
Yes, that was one of the stepping stones. Yep.
Yeah, I remember that time very well. And now you're a place agent, one of the place teams in Austin. So thank you for taking the time. Last week, we had Cynthia Freud from Minneapolis, and what was really cool about Cynthia was a new construction agent for about 10 years, and she broke away from that to create a $50 million resale business, farming and working the projects that she sold, and they were condos in downtown Minneapolis. Highly recommend that you watch that one, both for farming purposes, and if you're a new construction agent and you're trying to kind of go into your next iteration perhaps and wondering how you can farm what you've sold. She's just done a masterful job of that. We are uncharacteristically off next week, very unusual for us, but I'm going on a girls trip. I'm not gonna lie, I'm going on a girls trip. I'm going to be in Austin, actually, Jeanette, next week. Very excited about it. And then the week after that, we are back. So we're pretty much always here, either on Zoom or Facebook Live at noon Pacific time on Wednesdays. These are absolutely free. And if you're getting any value and benefit out of these, and if you're a watcher, we don't have ads on here. We don't really market or promote. My one request would be you can repay us by inviting another agent to come join us. We would love to just, spread our message around and up the bar for our entire industry. So my favor to you is if you could think of one person who would benefit from these, and let me know who they are, and we'll add them to the list, or just bring them to the Pivot Shift Ahead Facebook group. We would be really, really grateful. So thank you for that. So Jeannette, I'm gonna give you like a formal introduction because I feel like you have so much credibility. I want everyone to know what that is.
Thank you.
and then we're going to dive in. We kind of have 4 main points we're going to cover today, don't we? So Jeannette, besides being an incredible real estate agent, she has an incredible luxury business, and she's a massive and ardent philanthropist. And I think that's really cool. She is really into devoting herself to leadership positions in the nonprofit space in Central Texas. And I think that's really, really neat. What kind of nonprofits are you involved with, Jeannette?
A Texas Advocacy Project is my leading nonprofit. I was the chair for the last few years, and I'm thinking about taking a board position with them. So they serve Central Texas men, women, and children in domestic violence situations, both health and legal help.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. And you've also done some international things too, right? Microloans in Guatemala, Somalia, Sri Lanka, and in different places.
Cambodia. We have a Spinelli library in Cambodia through my good friend's charity, Caring for Cambodia, and that's a wonderful organization. So we went there to do the ribbon cutting for a library that we funded, and computers and books. It's just wonderful. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that. And before we kind of launch into our topic at hand, Jeannette, could you kind of let everyone know what your real estate team looks like so they can get a vision of your structure as they hear you talk today?
Sure. So we have a director of operations. It's wonderful. We also have a marketing person that takes care of listings and also marketing for the team. So onboards listings and services them. Once that part of the transaction is over, we have a contract to close person that's actually a cost of sales. So they're not an employee. We work with the same person with each transaction. We have a director of sales, Hillary Cabanis, who's just amazing, an angel. And we have an intern who does a little bit of everything. We have VAs offsite, of course, in other countries. And then we have 8 agents. And interviewing
Awesome.
2 more. So hopefully 10 agents soon.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. Cool. All right. Well, Jeannette, you and I think what we have in common is that we both kind of purposely went after the luxury space, right? Because my story, and this is unusual, I should say, for all of our regulars today. I've only done this once before where I'm actually participating in the conversation. Normally, I'm very comfortable in the role of interviewer. Today, I'm going to be both subject and interviewer with Jeannette, because this is a topic that I know a lot about. And I, like Jeannette, I didn't come into this from, our last name is not Vanderbilt, and so we had to figure out, how to get into this space. And so I think it put us in a position of having to be purposeful about it. Right. And I had a really thriving business, and then decided when I actually was at a different brokerage, and I moved over to Keller Williams entering 2011. And when I moved into Keller Williams, and I don't know if you remember, that was a horrible market. I just made a conscious effort that I was going to become a luxury agent, that I wanted at least a third of my portfolio, my listing and my sales portfolio, 30 to 50% to be luxury. And it's funny, Jeannette, because I know you're going to disagree with me, which I love it when we disagree. I actually did it for the money, and you're going to hate that because your big thing is don't do it for the money. But I got to tell you something, girlfriend. I was like, okay, I can work really hard for a $9,000 commission, or I can work really hard for a $30,000 commission. And that sounds better to me. Plus the houses don't smell. I like them. I think they're really pretty. I enjoy, all the things that go with luxury houses. I just love luxury houses. And so it was more like, I was just more attracted to it for a bunch of reasons. So I made the decision to go into luxury and just faked it till I made it. And I'm going to walk you through what I did, and you're going to walk everybody through what you did. And we're going to just share our secrets.
Well, and I should say, maybe I need to change that response, because when I started, I did it. I had to do it for the money because I was in a very bad situation.
Ditto.
There was no option. We had to make some money very, very quickly.
Ditto.
But I think that can't be the only reason.
100%. I agree with you. And I think that's, that's well taken, right? So I think that's where we should start. And I think we should start, especially for all the agents watching, because everybody's always asking you and me, Via, Jeanette, how did you get into luxury? And I think let's take a step back on that and talk about why luxury. And, we started on it, but why do luxury, Jeanette? Why sell luxury? What made you decide to do it? And who do you think is best suited to do it?
Sure. Why luxury, as I said, can be a lot of different things for different people. And I think also we should start by saying luxury isn't just million plus. In every market, luxury can be a different thing. Yeah. Generally, it's said to be 4 times your average price point, and that's about where your luxury market starts. So different for each person. For me, as I mentioned, I had a terrible family situation. Somebody died, left me with a bunch of debt, and I had to get out of it really, really quickly. And my average price point was $99,000. It was going to take me like 30 years to get out of debt. So I've got to make it 4 times that. That was the math that it came out to be. It's like, how am I going to do this? But when you're not in an urgent situation like that, I think why luxury is it's a natural progression of where your database is. So you may be helping people with their first home, and generally speaking, the next home they buy is going to be more, and then so on and so on. So why not move along the pace that your clients are? And also for me, I just found that I enjoyed the more approach of being more of a consultant and not a transactional salesperson. I liked getting to know my clients, for a longer period of time. Some I get to know longer than I really want to, but there probably doesn't move as fast in luxury. And sometimes, you are in deep relationship like a family with your clients, and that can be good and bad. But I found myself gravitating towards this desire to really approach my clients and consult with them in their entire reason for making purchases, which is always partially an investment, and really to be able to know your clients well enough to advise them on, say, even an investment property or a second home. That really comes from a deep understanding about your client. I'm not from a 30, 45-day transaction, because you put someone under contract the first time you took them out, or you got multiple offers the minute you listed the house and the transaction was done in 45 days. There's just not enough time. So I naturally gravitated towards that. And like you, I loved being in these beautiful homes. It's not bad.
It doesn't suck.
A gorgeous home. But I think, like perhaps a lot of people watching, I felt like I wasn't really, I hate to even use the word worthy, but when I started, I previewed a ton of houses because I needed to learn. I didn't know anything about the price point, and I started with all vacants because I didn't want to have to talk to the other agent, because I knew they would know that I didn't know what I was doing. And I had to grapple with the space in my head that I could do this, since I didn't have anybody with money. I didn't have a database like that.
I think what you said earlier on was really huge, and it's not something I'd ever thought about before. You actually gave me an aha, and you said that you gravitated toward being an advisor and a consultant to your client. And when I look back, I think that was part of, I don't think I was aware of it, but I think that that's something really good to point out. If you naturally gravitate and get gratified by being an advisory role, if you're a leader and you tend to have your circle of friends look to you as an expert or a leader, I do think you probably gravitate towards luxury. I also like being in that position. I like being in a position of influence and being part of bigger decisions, and I hadn't really thought of that before. I also just wanted to state that it's funny, I didn't know that about you getting into luxury, and you know, part of my decision, Jeanette, stemmed from, we were 6 months behind on our house payment. This was 2010 going into 2011, and it was, you know, it was dire straits at the time. And you know, I was like, if I have to sell like a house, I need to make as much money as I can. I think that you're right, though, that wasn't enough. You know, I also had to say, hey, am I equipped, and do I want to spend my time not on customer service, but on the customer experience? There's a big difference.
Yes.
You know, do I want to have a longer term relationship? Am I okay spending, back then, right, 12, 18 months on a listing if I have to, or do I want to be more transactional? I think for some of you watching who think you might want to go into luxury, really think about it. Maybe you don't. You might be more suited for you know, a high unit transactional business, and actually that's smart. Like, there's no right or wrong answer. You just have to kind of analyze it, how you want to spend your time, I think, in, you know, in your agent world. Don't you think?
Yeah, and what brings you joy? You know, like you were saying, like I had a marketing degree, so I like the strategy of marketing. I enjoyed the strategic analysis of their whole picture, like approaching them holistically. I always say, you know, we earn our seat at the table alongside their accountant, their financial advisor, and being able to be part of these conversations, to be able to change someone's trajectory for wealth. We all know in real estate that buying and selling homes and investment properties, that's one of the quickest ways to wealth. So I enjoyed being able to have a fingerprint on you know, helping people, because you know, not from buying and selling, but the real estate as an industry really saved our lives. In our situation, I was 6 figures in debt in a matter of 4 days. 0 debt to 6 figures. So it was like painful, like an elephant sitting on you every morning that you woke up. So it was make it or break it.
Oh, I feel you. That is, you know, it's hard to explain that burden of debt unless you've been through it. Boy, that's powerful. Yeah. So, you know, so here we are, and we did all this analysis. By the way, the other thing I analyzed, I don't know if you did this, but I actually spent a lot of time looking at the price sectors in our market, and really spending time on what was selling. And I actually chose the second from the highest price segment. So I've never been this big, you know, 5, 10, 15, $20 million luxury producer by choice. Back then, I was really focused on the 500 to 1.5. Now in my market, that's really moved to like 1.5 to 3. But I love that. I called it entry level luxury, right? Just at the beginning stages of luxury. That was perfect for me. It was a nice house. It sold a little quicker than, you know, maybe a $5 or $10 million house. I was very careful about deciding, you know, what was moving a little faster, you know, where was I more comfortable, what product did I know better, and for all the reasons we're talking about. So I actually didn't choose, nor have I ever chosen the highest level of luxury. So it's more of an upper end. Sometimes I call myself a more upper end agent.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, part of the strategy that I share when I'm coaching someone or teaching is really to, you know, just concentrate on where there is movement in the market. And there's a lot of different ways, you know, depending on how your MLS is set up, to search an area, put it in order of ascending or descending order in group, maybe in $250,000 increments or $500,000, almost like a price band analysis that you might use when you're pricing a property to see where there's movement in the market. And you may have to go back 2 or 3 years to really get a picture, because sometimes there's a little blip, you know, in trends. But when you do that in areas that you have an interest in, you can start to see where there's going to be the path of least resistance. So go ahead and place your energy and effort there. Another way to kind of maneuver your way in is where you have had success in a neighborhood or a part of town. Is there an area that kind of butts up to that, you know, is connected to it in some way, so you're not having to relearn schools or shopping or traffic patterns. You already have a basis of knowledge. And I think for you, and for me, I had to go from, X to 4 times that because of the necessity, but in a more strategic and purposeful manner of increasing your price point. I just going to go off of the, 411 this, if you know what that means, or lay it out on a piece of paper, just a 20% intentional increase in your average price point. And if you do that, I think I did the math once, if you use just a $500,000 average price point as an example, and 20% that average up, in 5 years, it's an additional 1.2 or 3 in GCI, additional in gross commissions. So it can be done. I think where people, I don't know about you, Vija, but when people ask me, how did you get into luxury? I think a lot of times they're thinking, how do I start selling $2 million houses?
Yeah, they are.
That can happen. That's luck, and we know luck is not a strategy.
That's right.
A strategy is a plan. So I encourage people, again, to take your average and say 20% higher or 25% higher. Where are those neighborhoods? I think they're here and here. Then do your analysis in ascending order of where that flow is and match yourself up. And keep in mind, if you're hearing that and you're saying 20%, know that there's some appreciation. So that 20% isn't all on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really, really well said. And in fact, I call it the ABCs of getting into luxury. A is analyze, B is become, which we'll talk about in a minute, and then C, what is C? What do I call C? Carry out and execute. I had to look that up. It's been a while. I have a class that I teach, and it's a really beefy class, so I only teach it once a year. So we just really went through analyze, and I think that whenever you're doing anything new, if you spend the upfront time getting clarity and doing the analysis, spend more time than you think upfront preparing, and then the rest of it is just executing the plan. So let's move into that, Jeanette. So here we are, we make our decision, we've done our analysis, we've got clarity on, either the neighborhood or the price or whatever it is we're going for to increase our price point going to luxury. Then what are the next steps that you did, right? Where did you go from there? For all of our agents watching, they've made their decision, they've done their analysis, now what?
Well, I think if you're, it depends on where you are in the journey. So if you're newer, I think it's critical that you learn the market. Some people might be really good at faking it till you make it, like Vija, it said. Other people might not. I think you always have more confidence if you actually walk away with some, or walk into a meeting or into a relationship with some basic knowledge. So I think the first thing is you've got to know your information so that you can prove up your value. Luxury consumers are savvy, they're financially oriented, they expect you to bring it. So you really have to educate yourself. And a couple of places that I suggest people go to are Knight Frank. They're a kind of global real estate company. They do an excellent report. Mm-hmm. Christie's White Pages does a great report. There's things like, there's a great book by a guy named Hubert, I think it's Broma, on how to invest in real estate with your IRA and 401k. It's about kind of expanding past this is the average days on market for this neighborhood. But how can you holistically approach these people? Because they have, as you're moving up, they have money, they have discretionary income, they might want to buy investment properties or second homes or condo college or a college condo kind of things. And so you really need to be able to differentiate yourself. I think how you contrast in luxury particularly, or whenever you're breaking into any kind of new kind of arena, how you contrast from the competition is much more important than how you compare. I mean, everybody does, a nice brochure, they say, and everybody has great photography. So going into a buyer or listing presentation about an auto search in the MLS, is just not going to cut it. You're going to need to explain how you're going to find those properties that are off market, or how you're going to dig and find non-owner occupied sellers that of properties, so maybe you can reach out to them in their state and tell them how hot your market is. That's a completely elevated conversation, and I'm going to set you up on an auto search where I've got a nice 4-page brochure. So as you move your price point up, expectations just are going to increase. So that you've got to have your basics down so you can talk the talk. And that's how I started. I just, back in the day, we didn't have the internet. I'm old. But I would just pop myself down in Borders bookstore, order 1 cup of coffee because that's all I could afford. And I would just grab London Times and anything on aviation and art. Now you can Google, but, there's so much information out there at your fingertips. So I think learn. The other thing is team up with a luxury agent. I mean, I did that. I was basically a free gopher for about a year, but it opened a lot of doors for me. Borrow on somebody else's credibility. Keep your ears open. Learn, listen, and I mean that will save you of just working hard. And of course, I just worked my tail off, so that never hurts.
Well, yeah, it's so funny how similar, because we did a prep call, but like we haven't really gone into this together. It's so similar because I think that, like I said, I call it the ABCs, and that B is become. Like, what does that mean? And for me, it meant very similar. The first thing I tell every agent is you have to preview. You have to preview so much. And here's why, you guys. The biggest objection is your lack of confidence. It is showing. And so you have to get so comfortable going into whatever house price level you decide, whatever neighborhoods you decide to focus on. You have to not only be comfortable, like you don't want to walk in going, whoa, whoa. You have to understand what the woods are, what the trends are. You have to understand and have an eye so that you can see what they've really put into that house. And the only way to do that is through experience and walking through. And, we won't do it today, but when I teach my class, I get very in depth about how to take that knowledge and pepper it into your walkthroughs when you're meeting with sellers, and you subconsciously planting seeds that you're the expert in their product. And that only comes through previewing and asking a lot of questions. And so, it's funny, you started with vacant houses. I was the opposite, Jeanette. I actually purposely went to every broker's open house I could go to so that I wanted to shake hands. Remember when we used to shake hands? I wanted to shake hands with the agents. I wanted them to know me because I had had an experience. I'll tell you a story. I had an experience where I was competing for an upper end listing, a very expensive listing. And the other agent told the seller they had never heard of me. This was right, at the beginning of my career, and I hadn't really sold a lot of luxury. And I thought, oh, no, I at least need to be in the sandbox. Like, I need to be playing in the same sandbox. And so I made a concerted effort to go shake everybody's hand, meet every single luxury agent, because what I visualized was, if I'm going to compete against them, I wanted to say, what I know is Vija puts in the work. She's at every single one of my listings. She knows her product, and she's a worthy opponent. That's what I wanted. Yeah. That was what I visualized I'm saying. So I asked him a ton of questions. What kind of wood is this? What kind of cabinets are this? Whatever. And then the other thing I did, Jeanette, is I paid extra attention to that den study. I wanted to know who the sellers were. And I remember when I first started, for all of you in Seattle, there was a ton of executives in West Bellevue that had those little model airplanes because there was a ton of Boeing execs that were retiring. Then it started morphing into Microsoft millionaires, and then it started morphing into more venture capital and entrepreneurs. But I always wanted to know who owned the properties that I was ultimately soliciting, because then I could craft my message and my marketing and my scripts and my approaches to them. So once I learned, and in Seattle, not a big secret, it's really a high-tech executive for the most part, or a self-employed, an entrepreneur. Then I was like, okay, what language do they speak? what marketing do they see every day that I can emulate to make them feel comfortable that I'm one of them? You know, I'll tell you what, it wasn't cursive writing with a big headshot of Vija. That just wasn't going to vibe with that, right? So my luxury marketing is a very clean, straight type, a lot of white space. Now, for some of you, that may not work in your market, but this become, from my ABC, the became about being who I needed to be to, you know, really minister to my new target market. Like, you know, and so you have to learn who's owning these houses and everything about them so that you can talk like them, use the same terminology. I started using words like optics and KPIs well before I probably really understood what they were, if we want to know the truth, because I knew that that's what they talk like.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think when you're taking in this information, anything you can learn about finance, you know, even things like proactive or investment is very different than a sale, than saying selling or buying. So I think that's a very good point. And the other thing I would say about previewing, it also helps to make a defensible pricing strategy. So when you're able to, particularly in luxury, sometimes that sale happened a year ago, when you've been through there and you've taken notes, you'll laugh, I used to have an accordion folder. And
Yes, so did I.
In there by the street name. And so when I'm looking, you know, for pricing and I see this house, I know I've been in it, I'd go to my accordion folder and then I would see the notes, because we all know what you see in the MLS isn't always the whole story. So I would be able to reflect on that. And there were times where I brought my accordion folder into a listing presentation to prove that I've been in all of these houses. Here are my notes from 18 months ago. And that was very impactful to the seller. And you have to have this, and I love that term, defensible pricing, because you need to defend your price. If you have an unrealistic seller, you need to defend your price to a buyer's agent. You need to defend your price to an appraiser. Critical to have that information, and not just what's in the MLS, but what sells off market, what withdrew and expired, because we know that that's something that pricing or the condition didn't succeed. So that's like a whole hour just on, you know, pricing the priceless and creating perceived value. But you have to start with knowledge, and that's for the new person, but it continues with the experienced person.
Completely, because they may be experienced, Jeanette, in another price point or in another area. They have to redo that if they're getting to know a new area. And
even now, like, I've got to keep up on still previewing. It's not like you know, one and done. And for people that are watching who, you know, who have some years under them, the other thing you can do is just, you know, take your SOI. You want to move up in price, let's say. So just take your SOI. You know, they're a path of least resistance. They already know you, love you, trust you. And just kind of look at that SOI and decide, you know, what's your top 20%? Now, it's not always by price point. Somebody might be in your top 20% because of referrals. Or because of their connections. But what's the top 20% of price point? What is the price point you're trying to get into? Where are your clients in your SOI that match that price point? Almost create what I call an elevated SOI, and treat those people a little differently. You may call them more, and when you call them, you have to bring something of value. Not just how, you know, hello, and this is what I sold recently, but really trying to figure out who you already have that might be able to help you get to that next level. And those are the people you might have to go after more intently on, are you looking for investment property? Oh, the kids are going to be leaving for college soon. You've been vacationing in Colorado every year. Have you ever thought about purchasing a second home there? And of course, we've got great referral partners that, you know, can take care of that business. So it's about looking at who you already have and maybe creating more transactions out of that person instead of just waiting for them to buy the next house.
Yeah, really, really well said. And I think what's interesting about that is you naturally moved into the next step. But I want to just stay briefly on the become step, because I think that where a lot of you, if you look back on some of my fails, I'll just use myself, is I wasn't ready for those at-bats. So I got a couple at-bats and I wasn't ready. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't really have the knowledge, right? You will get confidence through competence. You really will. The more knowledge you have, the more ready you are for that at bat. So when you start going for that appointment and you get that appointment, you're going to be ready. I mean, Jeanette bringing in that accordion folder, that is a visual. You were ready to go, and your clients felt that. And to add to that, what I started doing, I lost a listing in a very desirable area that I wanted. And I asked, for my own edification and growth, can you kind of share with me why you chose that other agent? And he said, well, honestly, you were great. It was really close. It was just that she knew everything about every transaction that was happening, that was pending, that hadn't yet closed. And we trusted her for that. So part of my strategy when I was previewing and I was getting to know the agents was they knew my face, they knew me. They would take my call and they would spill the beans sometimes on pending transactions. And by the way, I reciprocated so that, I could then go to the listing appointment and go, oh, I know all about that. That sold with multiple offers. It actually went for 100 more, or that sold for 100 lower, or, that actually smelled a little funny. I know the pictures look good, not so good. So I knew the behind the computer things that you talked about. And that shines through. That's just knowledge and confidence, right? Now, and then you moved into, which was perfect. Okay, now we're at the appointment. So now we've done all the groundwork and we know our stuff. Now we get that at bat, and you can get that first appointment, guys, a lot of ways. Jeannette just said SOI, sphere of influence. You can get it from open houses. You can get it from mailers. You can get it from social media. However, you're going to get that first appointment. And by the way, definitely bring in a seasoned luxury agent on your first one if you're insecure. You are far better taking 50% of something than 100% of nothing. So this isn't the time that you got to learn. This is like you're getting your MBA in luxury real estate. So do whatever it takes to get your name on the sign,
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how else did you get those first few appointments when you made that decision?
Once I had the information, I felt confident, and I just prospected. I mean, I just called and called and called. And once I got a break, you've got to woo and wow them like they've never been wooed and wowed before, because they are taking a bit of a risk on you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to make sure they never doubt that they've made the right decision. And it was continuous communication. At that time, I didn't have a support staff. I didn't have an assistant. So I had to do all of the jobs. Of course, I had more time. And by the way, I think that was a good, a good platform to really understand what it takes to get a listing onboarded and, call people for feedback and some of the things that I think you might leverage out as you get busier. So for me, I wanted the confidence first, and then I started interacting with the other luxury agents. They were pretty difficult here. I don't know about your area, but they were not, it was like being in high school or, going through rush in college. It was just very difficult, and they were not helpful at all. So I really had to prove myself to them, but I did it later because I felt secure and I wanted the right information, but it came from learning first, prospecting, and then when I had that one, my first big break came from a gentleman, and he had a whole neighborhood to sell.
Wow.
And I got that listing, and I had no idea that a bunch of others, very seasoned agents, were going after that business. He was my one thing. Mm-hmm. And I just knocked it out of the park. We're still very close friends today. Actually, he's retired and then came back to work as a sales agent in the Horseshoe Bay area with Keller Williams.
Oh, wow.
So things come full circle, and I helped him kind of get started out there. Wow. So it was, I was able to repay him. But in a class in Bold once, the instructor challenged me to kind of add up all the transactions that came from that one time. And this, what you said was so important. It's about, being prepared for the opportunity. I mean, opportunity doesn't knock and you say, hang on a second, I'll get right back to you. You got to be ready. And this is a perfect example. It's a textbook example. But back to the math. So I did this math and it was like just under $300 million.
Wow.
That one relationship, because then somebody bought a lot there, then they had to sell the house that they were moving out of, and then they referred me to another, so you never know where your business is going to come from. And I always say, it doesn't matter if it's a $200,000 client, you treat them like they're a $10 million client, because in a lifetime in your career, it could very easily refer you to $10 million worth of business. Every bit of business is important.
Yeah, 100%. And you said it so well. You have to be ready for the opportunity. And I mean, I'll go extreme. You need to be ready up here, and you need to have, the stuff with you, because picture it this way. The most extreme example is, would you be ready? Could you go to an open house this weekend in a luxury neighborhood that you really want to target? And the neighbor comes in and says, hey, can you come to my house after the open house is over and do a CMA for me and give me a listing presentation? Would you have to say, ooh, I need to go and come back or whatever? Or would you be able to walk over? And of course, you're going to have to fine tune pricing, but would you be able to walk over and, in essence, give a really good broad overview of a pricing strategy and a really good market overview? And would you be ready? And if the answer is yes, then you're good. If the answer is no, you probably have some work to do. You probably have to go preview and really keep in touch with the market. Which reminded me, when you were talking, Say Sheldon Poole and I did one of these Wednesday webinars. It was probably like a month ago. Maybe Hattie can post the link. And we did it on using data in our appointments. And I have so many stories about how just understanding real estate data and the market and explaining it has helped me convert and actually attract so many of my high-end clients. And it also caused me to lose them in the beginning before I figured it out, because I didn't have that ability. Please take the time to learn 2 or 3 things. That's all you need. Whether it's inventory, whether it's, how many new listings, choose your 2 or 3 data points in your market that matter and be the expert at those. Have monthly or weekly charts of those, understand how to read them, understand how to present them, be able to pull them up on your iPad or your computer in 3 minutes.
Right.
Whatever it is, you have to have command of the market and of the data and of the trends and what's happening. That's part of being ready and having the preparation you need for your at bat. It's not just a specific home. It's understanding, sense of urgency. The last thing I wanted to add to that, I took so many notes when you were talking, Jeanette, is you said something early on that you and I very much agree with, and that is that sellers are risk averse. Sellers are risk averse. The higher end the seller, the more averse they are to risk. What do I mean by that? This is a very large asset. They are aware of that asset. They are going to most likely choose someone whose signs they've driven by for a long time in their neighborhood, because they just know that they've had success selling in their neighborhood, or they're going to choose someone that's been personally referred to them by someone that has a house similar to theirs. They do not take risks on these big assets. And this is why you sometimes have to partner with other agents to become that agent along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say, they're not able to buy a $2 or $4 or $5 million house because they have made bad decisions. So that's not going to change.
Yeah, that's right. So, okay, so we did the analysis. We kind of chose our price band. I call that the A. The B was become, where we were prepared and we made ourselves prepared. And then we started going on our first appointments and got our first few listings. The C, carrying it out. How do we then take that, Jeanette, and make it into a pretty substantial part of our business? What came next for us?
For me, it just kept going back to the plan and putting into place. So it was just a lot of rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And once I had, a following, I guess you could call it, and it was about how am I going to get to the next level? How am I going to top grade this business so I could get referrals from these people? And it really expanded into, being more service oriented. I think you said something in the beginning about the customer experience, but it started in the beginning of just making sure I was servicing them, and later it moved into the experience. But I think that one thing that's different in luxury than maybe an average price point is you really want that, first off, they're used to being catered to. They're used to, like a concierge approach, what I think is sometimes a little overused these days. Everyone says they provide service, but there's a difference between service and concierge care and experiences. So that was kind of my next thing. Is I just wanted to be the person that they went to for everything, advice. And sometimes through setting them up with, they had family coming in and they needed a chef. One time I had somebody who asked me if they knew who could shut down the 360 bridge so they could do a wedding proposal on the bridge. I mean,
what? Did you? Did you do it?
No. But I did set them up with a guy who flew under the bridge. And so anyway, that's a whole.
I love that they thought you were super women and could do that though.
Like, Jeanette, I don't know how to do it. And kind of our philosophy is, if it's not illegal or immoral or unethical, we'll do it. And flying the plane under the bridge was probably illegal, but the FAA didn't call me, so I was here. But we like to say, and of course, I keep going back to, I want people to feel like, gosh, I can't do these things. Back to your mission, I can't do these things because I don't have help. I don't have an assistant. I don't have a big budget. You can start small from a service aspect. I mean, that's what I did. And you're the one doing those things. You're the one helping the client. You're the one dropping things off. You have to start someplace, but if people are going to expect to turn to you and say, can you take care of this? And sometimes it's not related to their house. I mean, you just I think we could both write a book about some of the things we've been, asked to do. But, it comes from just being able to say yes. I mean, people hear yes. And that's what we say, our team, the answer begins with a Y and ends with an S.
Yeah.
That is the answer.
Yeah. And it's interesting about, from the time you and I started to now, social media emerged too, because my answer to the question was, how do you take those initial at-bats and then turn them into a powerhouse business? And my answer is leverage the heck out of every single sale that you want to highlight, buyer or seller. I've learned along the road, almost 20 years in real estate now, that the general consumer doesn't really differentiate too much. The savvy ones do, but most, if you sold a house, whether you're the buyer's agent or the listing agent, they don't seem to differentiate those. So if you've done a buyer sale and you're showing pictures, as far as they're concerned, subconsciously you probably listed the property. And so I sent postcards, I sent emails. Those are the ones I really, really highlighted because I knew that sellers were risk averse and I knew that they needed to be comfortable seeing me with that level of product, right? And then when I got, my big break, I would say, was when I sold Kevin Durant's house. And the only reason I can say that, Jeanette and I can't actually tell you a lot of the homes we sold because we have NDAs, either verbal or in writing, but they allowed me to advertise that. So I'm allowed to say it. Nice. It was really nice. I flat out asked, I said, I think we can help your value. It was a very tough market when I sold it, 2011. Just a tough market. And I said, I think it will help boost your value if we can use your name. And they said, no problem. That's great. And I got on the front page of the Seattle Times real estate section. We had hundreds of people through the open house. I made sure I invited my database to come see Kevin Durant's house, is a thing. I mean, I really, really milked that because in my mind, it was social proof. If Katie, trusted me to sell his house, then I'm pretty sure you can too.
Yeah.
You know, at least
And I
that's the
think
subconscious message.
for me, what I felt was going to work back to that path of least resistance was who already trusted me.
Yeah.
And I think most people want to help, and it's our job to ask and have clarity about what we're wanting. And those first degree of separation relationships really came to fruition for me. And I just got really good at saying, didn't we do a great job? You're getting yeses and appreciation all throughout the transaction, right? So at a certain point where it seems natural, that's when you ask, do you have a referral for me? Who do you know that I can help? I'm looking to grow my business. I don't think there's, particularly with, a lot of luxury people are entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And they respect you wanting
right.
to grow your business. And I don't think it's embarrassing or odd to ask for that. So for me, as I got bigger and grew with clients, it became almost unmanageable and with so many people. And so that's where I started thinking, who are my top people? Yeah. And that kind of goes back to that 20%. So we kept top grading, not just who we were going after, but to your point, what we were sending out. So we call it kind of deconstructing what we're doing and then reconstructing it. And that still happens. I mean, I think you're constantly improving. Mm-hmm. You should be constantly improving. So I mean, everything from your drips to your marketing plan to your pre-listing console, your pre-listing package. And it really is, I think, a process that's best served with many eyes on it. So if you don't have anybody else, it's a few mentors in your office. If you have a team, it's everybody on the team, even the intern. I mean, everybody should have a say, and it's just nice to have this feedback. So when I talk about top grading, I'm not just talking about your people, but what you're doing, what you're saying. And again, that goes back to, being educated, learning what is out there, because the world, I mean, look how much the world has changed, right? The world is constantly changing. So, I believe that education that we started talking about in the beginning never ends. There's some great books and podcasts that I listen to that kind of keeps you sharp.
Empire building is one of them, I hope.
Empire building, I love that. I also like Power of Moments, which I think a lot of you have read. And then for client care, it's like Be Our Guest. There's a Gold Standard. I mean, there's so much. I mean, again, you don't have to have 15 things. Just start. Just start with one thing and know that high net worth people want information that's valuable, that's good. They want a convenient experience. They want you to be relevant to them. They want memorable experiences in good ways. And you just have to be there to kind of support them in anything that they're doing.
Yeah. Do you want the best script in real estate that I learned from Debbie DeGroat?
Absolutely.
I learned this. She was my first, let me think, when did I learn this? Maybe 2013 or 14, she taught me this. And it's basically, what are your real estate related plans this year? Mm-hmm. Jeanette, what are your real estate related plans this year? Do you have any? It is the easiest script. I have used that for years. It is just casual. It rolls off the tongue. And then the follow-up is great. Do you know anyone that has any that I could talk to? It's just non-aggressive. It's easy. It's, just what are your plans? Because a lot of them are, well, I'm going to go buy a home in Suncadia, or I'm going to go buy a home in Chelan, or all of our second home markets. You're like, oh, great. I know great agents out there. Are you connected with someone, or whatever? The second thing I wanted to just add to that was really, really good. I took more notes. The second thing I wanted to add to that is I have a secret for you all. And the secret is, can I share with you what your high-end clients want to see on your email campaigns? Can I share that with you? They want to see two things. This is a big secret. Are you ready? They want to see data, and they want to see other luxury high-end homes you've sold. That's it. That's really what they want to see on they don't want to see your recipes, guys. They don't want to see them. They really don't, they understand it's daylight savings time. They do. Really, they do. You don't have to tell them. So they want to see data. They really want to see data. They want to see market reports. They want to see things that are telling them, you know, what the pulse is in real estate and in their market. Jeanette, we are blowing up with questions, and it's really interesting because there is a theme of all of these questions. So the basic theme is, how do you preview a home without a buyer? They're saying that it's really hard to get into some high-end homes without a pre-qualified buyer, without a letter, you know, when you're just searching the market. So how did you do it, and how do you do that now?
I just tell them, call me when you already have a showing, and I'll be there before or after.
I just call, and I'm in Seattle, the Seattle area. There's two things I do. I am very, very diligent about going on certain MLS areas here in Seattle have tour days, and they have open house days. And I am very diligent about going on those because of this, because it's very hard to get in these houses. You have to discipline yourself on those days and those times, no matter what's going on in your life. You schedule your world around them.
Yeah, time block it. Definitely.
The other thing I do is I just call and you know, I just schedule a preview appointment. And, you know, sometimes that, you know, I would say, no, I don't have a buyer, but I'm doing an open house there this weekend, and I want to be sure that I'm, you know, I understand product. And then what oftentimes the listing agent will say, okay, well, listen, can I call you when I have a showing, and then we can piggyback it, or, you know, whatever it is. And I usually try to accommodate. So, okay. We have a couple more minutes left. What do you think the biggest obstacles and challenges are that most agents face who say they want to go into the luxury space, and it's looming in front of them and they just don't know how to break in? What's the biggest challenge?
I think it goes back to just being knowledge-based, and those challenges kind of melt away. I mean, from the seller, the buyer, or the other agents, they don't want to waste time. They want to know they're dealing with somebody who knows their business and means business. And so I think you can solve all things by preparation. I mean, for me also, the personal challenges, I just didn't know anybody that had any money, you know, so I didn't have a database to call and, you know, or for a first sale. So all the more reason I had to know my stuff, and it was uncomfortable, and but that's growth. So I was happy to work on it.
Yeah, I would say that's the same as me, Jeanette. You know, I was out there very aware and looking for opportunities, but the biggest obstacle I had to face was the gap of knowledge that I needed and that I didn't have. And I can't stress enough how much regular previewing needs to happen. And by the way, if that just sounds horrible to you, I mean, you know, not everyone here should probably be a luxury agent. It's not for everybody. And if that just sounds horrible to you, to have to time block like 1 or 2 broker open tours in your week every week, you know, that it may not be for you, and that's okay. Because you have to really be committed to that. You have to be committed to learning your product, not just learning the product. You need to know when someone says, you know, oh, you know, the neighborhood park and the yellow house around the corner, you just really have to know that. And you have to understand what I call the lines of demarcation. So, you know, the best example I have for all of you locals is Market Street in Kirkland, west of Market and east of Market. You can be on either side of the street and you're going to have very different pricing. And often we'll have outside agents come in and completely not understand that and be off on pricing and show their ignorance of the area. Every area has areas that there's borders and there's boundaries, and they're often like one street different.
Right.
You have to learn that. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Jeanette, you're teaching a class or a course, is that right?
We do have, it's a 5-part course. I don't know if there's a link for it that we can, I think maybe one of your ladies has the link.
Where can they find it?
Well, we always advertise it on my Facebook, but there is a link I believe I sent to Hattie that maybe she can post.
Okay.
But it's something we've done live a lot, and if anybody emails me, I'll get you on the list. We're going to do an hour just kind of open Q&A as a lead-in for anybody that registers. And then that class is, at your leisure. They're recorded, and then we do some separate Q&A, so you get some live interaction. But that really breaks down, even pricing's one chapter, not building your knowledge base is another, and then kind of the last thing that we didn't get to that I get a ton of questions on is the arrival and departure service that we offer, arrival service for buyers and departure service for sellers, and how you scale that. What does that mean? That's part of the experience. How do you start that if you're an individual agent with a small budget, all the way to, a Kevin Durant kind of level client, what you can do for them. So I think our mission is are the same, in that we want people to walk away and be able to use something right away and not feel intimidated. It's just about taking that first step, and then the next ones follow. But trying to dump 6 or 8 steps at one time, making that leap is just daunting, and it's it kind of sets you up for a little bit of failure. And we want everyone to succeed in this business. The more people that are doing well, the better it is for everybody.
That's right. For all of you in Ben Kinney world and our guests, I teach a 3-hour class on very specific class on getting into luxury, and we just a very specific drilled down version of this. I don't have one scheduled, but I probably teach it, I don't know how often, but not very often. And so, contact me, Facebook message me, or anyone in our world, and we can get you on our mailing list, and we'll be sure to invite you when I do teach that. But Jeanette, I cannot thank you enough for taking an hour, very, very valuable hour out of your day and giving us incredible knowledge. I took notes. One of your big nuggets to me was how you contrast is more important than how you compare. I loved that. Yeah. I love your term defensible pricing strategy. I love how you talked about an elevated sphere of influence. I love that. And I love how you said most people want to help and it's our job to ask. So those are my big takeaways, I think.
Oh, good. Well, thank you for having me. It's always so much fun to talk to you, and thank you for including me. I love following this, so it's fun to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. You brought so much value to all of our people, and to all of you, our Wednesday webinar viewers. We will not see you next week. Isn't that weird? Usually I say, we'll see you next week. We will not see you next week. We will see you in 2 weeks, and we'll be sure to get you the topic and all the information on that one. So we're signing off. We will talk to you guys soon. Have a fantastic week.